Hey everyone, we are back again for 5 Minute Football. I'm Mike Waxman with College Football Focus, and we are joined today by Matt Sprouse from the Group of Five guys. They are keeping up the good fight with the Group of Five, which is often an underrepresented segment of college football, but they do about as good a job covering everybody as you can find. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, Mike. Thanks for the invite and thanks for letting me come on and hang out.
Yeah, no problem. We're going to chop it up some here on Conference USA. I know that a lot of people have, they don't, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, Conference USA kind of, even among the lower division of football, they're kind of lower themselves. I know that they don't get a whole lot of publicity, but I guess the first one we'll talk about the headline team, the Liberty Flames. I know that last year they were kind of front and center. They got to the New Year's Six, didn't go the way they wanted to. This year they're looking for bigger things. Obviously, they are one of the prime contenders for the Group of Five spot, along with Memphis, Boise State, maybe Texas State. What does Liberty have to do? Um, I think it's a foregone conclusion that barring some just catastrophic injuries to frontline players, they're probably going to win the league. What do they need to do to really position themselves for that Group of Five bid? Is going undefeated good enough, or do they really need to make a statement in their games?
I kind of agree with the latter. I think their schedule is going to get a little more respect this year. I mean, if anybody goes into Boone and beats Appalachian State, that's
Right.
a big time win. So that's going to look a lot better resume wise. I do think the way that they lost to Oregon in that bowl game is just going to be on everybody's mind. So I think they're going to need some help. Now, your other contenders that you mentioned, right? Boise State's got to go to Oregon this year. So if Boise State goes 11-1 but gets beat by 30 points by Oregon, then who's to say that an undefeated Liberty doesn't deserve the bid again? And I think that's something that a lot of people overlook. I mean, Oregon was 6 total points away from probably playing for a national championship.
Yep.
They lost to Washington twice by 3 twice. So this wasn't just, that Oregon team from a year ago was better than, that's a playoff team. That was a top 4 or 5, no doubt, team in the country last year. So I think Liberty, they've got to do that. But I do think they need to, in the league, win by some bigger margins. I don't think that they can beat Middle Tennessee by 3 points again. I don't think that they can really play anybody in the conference tight. I think they got to have more double-digit wins. I think their defense has to improve. Their offense is going to do. I mean, listen, that offense is tough, but they're not going to be able to win 38-35. I think they got to win 38-10, 38-13 a lot more often.
Yeah, and they certainly have the firepower to do it with Caden Salter, who was briefly in the portal, decided to come back. A really good running combination. They've really got all the weapons on offense. The defense, I think, doesn't get respected enough, but they were actually a pretty solid defense last season. So we will see if they can indeed have the inside track for for that Group of Five berth. I guess if we're going pecking order, the next two logically would probably be Jacksonville State or Western Kentucky. Which of the two do you like best to challenge Liberty and probably make the CUSA championship game?
Well, Jack State surprised me. I'll be transparent. I did not think that they would be able to do what they did last year, but you got Rich Rod. I think Western Kentucky, for whatever reason, they tend to lay an egg here or there. But I do think the addition of TJ Finley to that roster he's going to be a nightmare for a lot of
Yeah.
defenses. And he's one of those guys. It's not because he's, the next Hall of Famer or anything like that, but he's so big that he's just going to be a problem for a lot of defenses. And look, Western Kentucky has set records with just about every quarterback that's come through over the last 5 or 6 years. So look out for them. I would say Western, but very close.
Yeah, Rich Rod, I know that they're kind of knocking on the door, and that team just, if there's a team in the league that epitomizes their coach more than Jacksonville State, I don't know who it
That's
is
a fact.
because they're just kind of in his mold. They'll just run it, they'll run it, they'll run it, and then they'll kind of go over the top and try to catch you napping. But I think that that will be almost more interesting because again, if Liberty does what people think, the race is going to be for second place. And I think those two teams will hang around all season long. There is some coaching turnover in the league this year. There are three new coaches, I believe: New Mexico State, UTEP, and Middle Tennessee. Middle Tennessee has a veteran in Derek Mason. He's kind of back in the head coaching game. UTEP has an up and comer in Scotty Walden, and New Mexico State has Tony Sanchez, who was in the Mountain West before. Of those three, who do you think is best primed to maybe have the best year one?
Um, I think I got to go Scotty Walden at UTEP. We had a chance to get him on our show for an interview, and I mean, the guy just exudes energy. And that town of El Paso, if they win a couple games, man, they're going to get, but they're the show in El Paso.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing, you don't have a bunch of Texas fans over there. So if they win a couple of games and that Sun Bowl gets to be rocking for you, I mean, that's a big stadium now, especially for the group of five. So they win a few games, but I think he just, that's a guy that just is building culture. Now, I would love to say Derek Mason. I'm a Middle Tennessee alumni. So I hope that they do. And I've met him, and he's another guy that you just want to talk about energy. But I just think both Middle and New Mexico State, I think, lost a bunch of production in the portal,
Mm-hmm.
where I think UTEP got better in the portal. So that's why I would lean towards Scotty Walden on that.
And Scotty Walden knows the lay of the land in Texas too. So I mean, he's certainly not going to get the guys at Texas and Texas, but he can get some of those rural guys, the guys
Mm-hmm.
down by the border who don't have a whole lot of places to go, and he will get them to believe in what he's selling because if the guy knows offense,
Yep.
so if nothing, even if they don't win, they will be an exciting team to watch.
Yeah, I agree.
Um,
I think they're a dark horse. I think outside of obviously Liberty and Western and Jack State, like we talked about, I think there's that other tier of a UTEP, a Middle Tennessee. I don't know if you're going to get to it, but possibly down there in Miami with FIU. I got a little hunch on the Panthers, but
they're coming up. I know that they've also got some experienced guys, but it's a shame that UTEP couldn't do this with Gavin Hardison. He was one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch.
yeah.
So, but it's nice when UTEP is winning. I was down there about a year ago and was not able to get into the Sun Bowl, but I saw it from the outside. And you're right, it does look pretty impressive. So, if they can win, I'm sure that at least the university area will be rocking.
Yep.
Speaking of new, and last but not least, we've got Kennesaw State coming into the league. They had been for quite a while. They had been in FCS power. The last few years were not great. I think they've won just 8 games. But I know that the transition to FBS is typically a steep one, but they've got some guys. I mean, they've certainly one of the standout players who could be all conference is Derek Westmoreland, who is a real rush terror for them. They're probably going to have to get it done with defense because the offense, I think, is just not suited right now, depth wise. What do you see as Kennesaw State's impact or ceiling? I mean, are they just going to take lumps every week, or by the end of the year, do you think they could be maybe a competitive team, maybe spoil something for somebody?
Well, they redshirted a bunch of guys last year, so you could kind of, I don't want to say cancel the year, but they redshirted a bunch of guys to get ready for this year. And it's funny, you look at last year, Jack State and Sam Houston. And Sam Houston, even though record wise you'd think they were horrible, I mean, they lost every game they lost by a possession, pretty much. So we said it all year long. We were like, this is the best 0-8 team of all time.
Right.
So I think Kennesaw State's got a chance to be like that. But I do think the depth is tough. And especially as the season goes on, you get an injury or two, and then you just don't have those guys coming up. But I think, listen, you're in a place like that. You're so close to, I mean, you're basically in Atlanta. There's guys everywhere. So yes, you're competing with, obviously you're not going to get the Georgia guys. And then you got Georgia Tech, and then you got Georgia State in your neighborhood pretty much. But there's so many great athletes in Atlanta. You can find a couple of sleepers. that'll go to a place like Kennesaw State. And, look, if the league is as bad as the outside world likes to think, then they do have a chance. And I think they'll take some lumps, but I don't think it's going to be a situation where they're just getting blown out every week.
Yeah, they certainly they seem to have some athletes. I know they got a couple of guys up front on the offensive line who are veterans. It's just a question of how productive they could be at quarterback and if they can make some explosive plays, because that's kind of what was missing last year. But maybe some of the redshirted guys give them a little bit a little bit of pop. Um, that is pretty much. I think we've covered a decent amount of the storylines in CUSA. If folks want to follow Group of Five guys, what is it they can do? They can get, what are the socials and what is like the website or the podcast sites?
Yep, we're on all the social platforms: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. It's at Group of Five Guys, all one word. And then YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, anywhere you stream a podcast, just search Group of Five Guys, subscribe. Or you can go to groupof5guys.com, and that'll have a link to pretty much everything we've got going on: old podcasts, old shows, some merch if you wanted to support in that way. But yeah, search Group of Five Guys. You can find us all over, man.
You guys should get a sponsorship deal from Five Guys.
You know anybody? Buddy, I would
I just
slam
know
a
that
couple double cheeseburgers every
they
show.
give you a ton of fries. It's like 4 and 5 people could eat those fries. So
They do. They're good though.
they are.
That Cajun seasoning that they do is
Yep,
big time.
it is good. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. We may try to touch base sometime during the season. Maybe pick up at the halfway point, see how things are going. And again, thanks for coming on and talking some Group of Five and CUSA with us.
Mike, I appreciate it so much. Thank you, sir.
You are quite welcome.